Deep beneath the crushing weight of the ocean, something has been waiting for over 300 years. A heavy, corrupted silence covers the seabed, where the shadows play tricks on the mind and the light barely reaches. Imagine diving into those freezing, uncharted waters. Your oxygen is limited. Your heart is pounding against your ribs in the absolute darkness. And then, emerging from the endless blue gloom, you see it. The skeletal remains of a ship that was supposed to be a myth. A vessel carrying a name that makes historians tremble and treasure hunters risk their very lives. For centuries, the world believed that the legendary fortune of Captain William Kidd was nothing but a ghost story. A maritime fairy tale whispered in dark taverns to terrify sailors. But what if I told you that the myth is terrifyingly real? What if the cursed wealth of history's most infamous privateer has finally been dragged from the abyss? And more importantly, what if the true nature of this treasure is far more disturbing than anyone ever imagined? This is not just a story about lost gold. This is a story about madness, extreme betrayal, and a bloody secret that the ocean tried to bury forever. To understand the sheer magnitude of this mind-blowing discovery, we have to travel back in time. Forget everything you think you know about pirates. The eye patches, the cheerful sea shanties, the romanticized adventures. That is all a fabricated Hollywood illusion. The reality of the high seas was a brutal, unforgiving nightmare of survival. Captain William Kidd was not a swashbuckling villain born of chaos. He was a highly respected man, a high society elite directly commissioned by the highest authorities of a massive global empire to hunt down pirates. He was supposed to be the law. A sanctioned privateer handed the keys to an incredible ship, an apex predator of the ocean armed to the teeth with massive cannons and a crew of desperate, violent men. His mission was incredibly simple. Sail to the edge of the known world, eradicate the violent pirate threat, and bring back the stolen riches to his masters. But the open ocean has a way of deeply changing a man. The endless, empty horizon, the crushing isolation, the creeping psychological madness of the violent waves. Months slowly turned into agonizing years. The crew grew starving and restless. Whispers of a violent mutiny echoed through the rotting wooden planks of the ship. And somewhere along that dark line, the heroic hunter became the ultimate hunted. Pushed to the brink of a mutiny, Kidd crossed an invisible and unforgiving boundary. He attacked a massive, heavily guarded treasure ship, a towering vessel overflowing with priceless silk, pure gold, and heavy silver. In an instant, the man hired to destroy the pirates became the most wanted pirate on the face of the earth. But here is the critical piece of the puzzle that changes everything. Kidd was a genius, and he knew he was a marked man. He knew the massive empire would send its entire naval fleet to hunt him down to the ends of the earth and hang him from the gallows. So he did what any desperate mastermind would do. He meticulously hid the fortune. He deliberately scattered his unimaginable wealth across highly secret, deadly locations, burying chests deep in the cursed earth and sinking heavy metals into the unforgiving sea. When the authorities finally caught up with him, he desperately tried to use the hidden locations of his massive treasure as a bargaining chip for his life. He wrote frantic letters offering the exact coordinates of a massive hoard of diamonds and rubies, but his powerful enemies did not care about the money anymore. They needed a public scapegoat. They dragged him to the execution docks. And this is exactly where the legend takes a profoundly dark, supernatural turn. Listen closely, because this is where the curse begins. When the executioners put the thick noose around Kidd's neck and dropped him from the terrifying scaffold, the heavy rope violently snapped. He fell to the thick mud, gasping for air, genuinely believing it was an act of divine intervention sparing his life. But the authorities were absolutely merciless. They brutally dragged his bruised, broken body back up the wooden stairs, tied a brand new rope, and hung him until he was completely dead. His rotting body was locked inside a heavy iron cage and suspended over the dark river for years, serving as a gruesome warning to anyone who dared to defy the empire. From that exact moment on, the terrifying curse of Captain Kidd was violently born. His legendary treasure completely vanished into the thick mist of history. Thousands of men have spent their entire lives and completely bankrupted their families trying to find it. Expeditions have ended in financial ruin, psychological madness, and highly unexplained deaths. The secret maps left behind were intentionally cryptic, full of bizarre occult symbols and intentional dead ends. It genuinely seemed as though the dead captain was still aggressively protecting his bloody gold from beyond the grave. Fast forward to the present day. A highly specialized, well-funded team of deep-sea marine archaeologists and elite military-grade divers set their sights on an isolated, deeply treacherous stretch of water near a historically notorious pirate haven. This specific, uncharted area of the ocean is a literal graveyard of broken ships, universally known for completely unpredictable deep-water currents and massive deadly predators. The anxious team deployed highly advanced military sonar technology, systematically scanning the pitch-black ocean floor for hidden anomalies. Days of agonizing searching yielded absolutely nothing but massive rocks and dead coral. The psychological morale of the exhausted crew was rapidly plummeting. The astronomical cost of the massive expedition was bleeding them completely dry. But just as they were desperately about to abandon the search and go home in absolute failure, the massive sonar system pinged. A massive, completely unnatural geometric shape was detected deeply buried in the ocean sand. It absolutely did not match any natural geological formation. The elite divers nervously suited up, plunging into the terrifyingly dark, freezing waters. As they rapidly descended, the comforting light from the surface faded into absolute, terrifying darkness. Their high-powered flashlights barely cut through the thick gloom, slowly illuminating a massive, highly disturbing debris field, rotting wooden timbers, massive rusted cannons, and then an object that made their blood run completely cold. Resting silently on the dead ocean floor, partially buried under centuries of thick marine growth, was a colossal, heavy silver bar. This was absolutely not just a random piece of discarded metal. This massive, glowing ingot weighed over 100 pounds. It was perfectly stamped with highly mysterious historical markings, deeply engraved symbols that matched the exact historical era of Captain Kidd's infamous ship. The shocked team had done the completely impossible. They had physically touched the cursed fortune of history's most feared captain. But the exact moment they painstakingly brought the heavy silver bar to the surface of the research vessel, the entire atmosphere violently changed. A heavy, highly unexplainable tension rapidly settled over the terrified crew. Highly advanced digital equipment began to mysteriously and completely fail. Sudden, incredibly violent oceanic storms appeared completely out of nowhere, aggressively battering the tiny ship and seriously threatening to send the entire expensive expedition straight to the bottom of the ocean. Was it just terrible luck, or was the dead captain making incredibly good on his violent promise? The monumental discovery of this massive silver bar changes absolutely everything we know about global pirate history. It definitively proves that Kidd's unimaginable, legendary wealth was absolutely not a myth. It is really out there. And this single, massive silver bar is just a tiny fraction of the colossal hoard. Leading historians now firmly believe that the rest of the cursed treasure is still highly scattered in highly hidden, incredibly dangerous locations, buried under isolated, deadly beaches, or resting in the sunken, rotting bellies of forgotten ships. The sheer economic scale of the missing fortune is highly staggering, officially estimated to be worth tens of millions of modern dollars today. But the highly controversial recovery of this specific silver ingot brings up a profoundly terrifying question. If they finally found one piece of the bloody puzzle, what else is patiently lying in the terrifying dark? When the elite divers explored the deep wreckage, they nervously reported seeing highly disturbing anomalies in the deep shadows. Strange, massive shapes moving just beyond the limited reach of their underwater lights. Highly unexplained electromagnetic interference that completely drained their specialized cameras and communication devices. Some of the highly experienced team members completely refused to ever go back down, violently citing a profound, paralyzing sense of absolute dread that heavily washed over them the exact moment they approached the massive debris field. This is the ultimate, undeniable psychological trigger, the primal, suffocating fear of the deep unknown. The massive ocean covers over 70% of our entire planet, yet humanity has barely explored a tiny, insignificant fraction of it. What else is highly hiding in the endless abyss? How many ancient, terrifying curses are just waiting to be violently awakened? Captain Kidd went to his muddy grave screaming his absolute innocence, loudly claiming he was intentionally framed by the very powerful elites who originally hired him. He violently swore that his hidden treasure would only ever bring absolute death and total ruin to those who dared to steal it. The shocking recovery of this massive silver bar is undeniably a monumental triumph for global archaeology, but it is also a highly stark, deeply terrifying warning. The deeper we aggressively dig into the bloody past, the more dangerous ghosts we violently awaken. The cursed artifact is heavily guarded, permanently locked away in a highly secure, undisclosed facility for intense metallurgical testing and historical verification. But the exact underwater location of the massive shipwreck remains a highly classified, incredibly guarded secret. The global authorities explicitly know that if the specific coordinates are ever leaked to the public, a modern-day, highly violent gold rush would instantly ensue. Hundreds of greedy amateur treasure hunters would rapidly flood the highly deadly waters, foolishly risking their incredibly fragile lives for a tiny chance at unearthing the rest of the highly cursed fortune. Imagine the absolute chaos. Imagine the desperate, blinding greed. The exact same maddening greed that originally drove Captain Kidd to absolute madness and ultimately to the terrifying gallows. We are deeply left with a highly chilling realization. The massive treasure was absolutely never meant to be found by humanity. It was intentionally meant to be a dark monument to a deeply broken man, a permanent, bloody stain on the highly violent history of naval warfare. Every single scratch, every precise stamp on that massive silver bar intimately tells a terrifying story of fresh blood, violent mutiny, and ultimate, unforgiving betrayal. As you closely listen to this, the massive ocean continues to violently churn. The incredibly dark waves violently roll over the completely unmarked graves of countless dead sailors and highly violent pirates alike. The broken ship peacefully rests in her watery tomb, violently holding on to the rest of her dark secrets. Will the highly cursed remaining treasure ever be fully found? Or will the massive, unforgiving ocean violently consume absolutely anyone foolish enough to ever try? Humanity has permanently opened a dark, highly dangerous door that can absolutely never be closed again. The terrifying legend of Captain William Kidd has been violently and permanently resurrected, aggressively pulling us into a deeply terrifying mystery that completely spans centuries of human history. Look incredibly closely at the history you always thought you completely knew, because sometimes the horrifying monsters are completely real, and sometimes they intentionally leave their cursed gold behind just to see exactly who is completely foolish enough to violently take it. The legendary fortune has finally been completely located. The ancient curse has definitely been awakened, and the highly terrifying hunt for the rest of the bloody pirate treasure has completely just begun.